So purple stability ball, if you have one. If you don't have it, you could do like a short foam roller or a yoga block as a substitute. You can probably also do any of these exercises without the ball. So if you don't have one, you can use your pretend ball, and I'll give you some cues for how to mix it up. Water maybe, and then just checking in with your breath. Obviously, you can opt out of anything if it doesn't feel comfortable, or if you have a different version that feels better for whatever you're working on. So dropping to elbows, or I'll throw out a couple options to kind of substitute some of the moves we're doing. We'll get started on the mat though. And let's actually come to our backs. So we won't use the ball for this first one. But we'll start with our feet a little bit wider than our hips. And then you can bring your arms out into a T. And then we'll let the knees fall from side to side. So a little windshield wiper here. And just connecting with your breath and kind of noticing how your spine fell onto the mat. So if the ribs are a little bit braced, maybe thinking about melting your rib cage with some breath. And then noticing as you're moving your thighs from side to side, does it feel like the thighs can move in the hip sockets? So playing with on this next one, whichever side you're on, try lifting your top knee up first as far as it will go before the second leg follows. So top thigh is going to press up and open, and then the second leg will follow. So we're just working outer hip a little bit more, right? Ideally, our thighs move independently of our hips when we need them to. So good to check in with that range of motion here. We want to restore the neutrality of our thigh bone in our hip socket. And that's going to help with the neutral pelvis position, makes everything work a little bit better, kind of restores mobility in all directions. And then let's bring the knees up towards the ceiling. You can walk your feet in a little closer, but keep them wide. Flex your feet. And then all we're going to do is press the hips up. And we're just going to hold for a couple breaths. So we're lifting the hips high. It doesn't have to be your most perfect Pilates bridge. We just want to kind of our anti-sitting muscles. We just want to get our posterior chain activated. So glutes, hamstrings. Breathe here, just making sure that we don't go so high that we're sitting in the neck. Just easy shoulders, easy ribs. And then we'll set the bum back down and we'll try that again. So pressing the hips up, keeping the feet flexed. Kind of noticing here if you feel like you're pretty evenly weighted. If you're favoring one side, you can always peek at the hips and see if they're level. Hopefully we start to feel some glute and hamstring here. A little bit turning on maybe. And then you can set your bum back down. So let's grab that ball. We're going to lift the hips. We'll start with a little core work. So you're going to put the ball underneath your bum. And we want to make sure that it's not forcing us into an arch. So we do want it low enough that we're lengthened here, maybe even slightly tipped, pubic bone towards chest. And then with your arms down or up to the ceiling for a little more challenge, you're going to float one leg to tabletop. And then you're going to lower that leg. And then try the other side. And so you could do this without a ball. What I like with the ball is you're getting a lot of feedback on what changes when we lift a leg. So is there a big shift in the torso? And ideally, we want to minimize. So this is your oblique work, anti-rotational, anti-side bending. And if this feels pretty easy, I'm going to have you draw one leg to tabletop and then bring your second leg to meet. So it's a little more unstable. So you're going to take your toe taps here. So slightly harder version. We're just gently tapping versus offloading. And kind of keep an eye on what that other leg that isn't moving is doing, right? Our body's connected. So if we're compensating with our supporting leg, the non-moving leg, it's going to make us compensate in the working leg. Right, arms to the ceiling is nice because it makes it a little harder, got a little less surface area. Also good if you like to grip through your shoulders. If you want to make it harder, still float your arms by your ears. So if I want more ab work, still I could tap a little bit further away. So by extending that tap towards the end of my mat, I'm increasing the ab work. And I just want to make sure my ribs aren't popping, my back isn't arching. I'm staying nice and stable here. Just an easy breath. Let's try one more each side. When you finish that last one, you can lower one leg at a time back down. We'll lift the hips here, take that ball out. And then you're gonna put that ball in between your thighs. So let's thread the hands behind the head. We'll kind of warm up the other end of the core here. So we're gonna nod the chin, exhale to float the head and shoulders up, just kind of gazing above that ball. And then see if you can lengthen back down in maybe 2 counts. So if you curl up in 1, on an exhale, we'll say you're gonna lower back in 2. So you get to take advantage of that eccentric. And so one thing that's cool about Pilates is we know eccentric is a better way to build strength than concentric. So think of like your bicep curl, it's the lengthening that's gonna build your strength. So same with your crunches. The crunch part, which feels hard, is the easier part of the two. So if you can take advantage of controlling your transitions when you're lowering out of movement, you'll build a little extra strength, which is kind of cool. I'm just checking in if the pelvis is trying to tuck or hip flexors want to grip. Keep the hips nice and heavy here. We'll try one more like this. Nice. Option 2 for this next set, you can squeeze the ball, lift your heels, drag your toes to your bum, and float your legs to tabletop. We'll take a couple crunches with the legs up. So now we're kind of noticing low back might want to arch a little bit more here. So we're going to keep our flat back position. You'll nod your chin and curl up, and then lengthening back down. So here's our challenge now as we lower the head and shoulders. Can we keep the legs still in space? And the abs on as we extend. Right, so functionally when we're moving in the real world, we need our abs to work when we're extending out and lengthening. We don't only want them to work when we're flexing. So good practice. Yeah, heavy bum here, just noticing if those hip flexors want to overwork a bit. Yeah, let's try one more like this. So keep your legs in tabletop. You're going to take that ball out. Turn your hands behind your head and then curl up, and we're going to stay. So we're going to hold this crunch. You can always rest the head if you need. We're going to take our toe taps here. So it's that thigh moving away from the core versus the knee bending, right? And you can kind of feel the difference. If I bend my knee versus moving my thigh, getting a lot more core work when that thigh reaches away. Nice. Yeah, let your head be heavy in your hands. Remember, your crunch comes from your waist here, so ribs sliding towards hips. We'll try 4 more. Exhaling as you tap, just checking in with that breath, nice and smooth, easy. Nice, last one. And you can lower your head and shoulders. You can pull your knees into your chest. Take a couple little rocks from side to side. We'll do one more little core thing before we kind of mix it up a bit. So you'll take your ball. If you don't have a ball, you can use just your hands against your thighs. Our legs are going to be in tabletop. We're going to press the ball into our thighs, and then our thighs are pressing the ball back into our arms. It's not necessarily arm and leg work, though. It's your core that's actually drawing together here. Do we feel some abs with that press? Nice. Okay, so as we have this, we're going to start to add a bird dog. So I'm going to tap my left toe as I reach my right arm overhead, and then I'm going to come back in and switch sides. So I'm keeping a constant squeeze. We're keeping an eye on if ribs want to pop, if back wants to pop. The fun part about this exercise is the more you squeeze, the more core work you get, but the more support you get. Yeah, and let that thigh really reach away. So I'm going to lose contact with one thigh as I tap. And you can decide, maybe it's just a couple inches or maybe it's a full tap. You break it down and just do the arms, just do the legs. If it feels like a little bit too much. Let's try one more each way. So you're going to even yourself out here. Nice. Then you can lower your legs one at a time. Pop that ball back in between your thighs. And let's reach the arms to the ceiling. We'll take a couple articulated shoulder bridge. So we've got our feet more in line with our hips. Closer is going to be more glutes, further is more hamstrings. So that's kind of a good way to figure out where to set your feet. We're going to roll up. So you're peeling versus pressing. Think of like peeling a Band-Aid up to lift the hips. And then you're going to reach your arms all the way overhead and rest them down on the ground. And lengthen your spine down one vertebrae at a time. So nice little stretch here. And we'll bring the arms back up to the ceiling and do that again. So rolling, think of peeling your spine. You'll notice the weight kind of sinks more into the feet as you do. Sweep the arms overhead, let them rest on the ground, and then melting the ribs back down. Reach those arms up to the ceiling. Let's try that 3 more times. So the goal is really taking advantage of kind of the assistance of gravity. When you reach your arms overhead, can you try to melt slowly so that your back gets down before your bum? And 2 more like this, and then we're reversing it on the roll up. So as I press to lift, the support's coming from underneath. Sweeping the arms overhead. So you can melt the ribs, kind of soften through the sternum. It's a bit of core work to find the detail. Last one here. Melting down. And taking your time, right? The longer you can keep your glutes up, you'll have a little bit more time to roll down through the spine. And let's take that ball out. Let's lengthen the left leg and we'll pull the right leg into our chest. You can grab onto shin or thigh and take a couple circles here. And for the circle, sort of notice if the whole body moves in one piece or if you can circle the leg independently. I just want to make sure we've got some separation here, and then reverse your circles. You're going to thread your hands behind your right thigh. And then flex your foot. We're going to do some knee pumps. So the idea is I'm going to draw my thigh as close to my chest as possible. I'm using my arms to brace my leg. And then I'm going to try to kick my heel to the ceiling. Now, it doesn't matter if the leg actually gets straight, but we'll just take these knee extensions and bends. This is a really great nerve stretch. So if you've got any like sciatica stuff going on, the flexed foot is going to be more beneficial. You're welcome to try the pointed foot too. That's still good for hamstring. You just might get a different stretch through the foot or the calf. And just easy breath, holding that thigh still in space. And then on the next one, if you want to keep your leg up, take a couple ankle circles, kind of exploring what that range of motion is. We know that ankle range of motion directly affects hip and vice versa. So if our ankle is a little bit stiff, it can definitely affect how we're moving in our hips. And then bend that leg, let your leg cross all the way over your body for a twist. So knee might not touch down. That's okay. You're going to sweep your right arm in opposition. You can use the left arm to keep the thigh down. You can also extend the right leg away if you want to make it a little more active here. So kind of 2 options, bent leg with the arm, or sweeping that leg away. And then on your next breath, you'll just gently reach that leg back down to meet your supporting leg, and we'll draw up our left leg and take a couple circles with this thigh. And just kind of noticing, can the thigh move independently or does the whole body want to move with it? Gonna have femurs, pelvis, and spine able to sort of mix and match depending on our movements. And we'll thread the hand, try threading the opposite way that feels natural, just kind of mix it up here. I'm gonna pin that thigh as close to your chest as possible. So you're bracing with your arms, flex that foot, and then you're gonna kick towards the ceiling and then bend. And just easy breath here. You can lengthen through that right leg. So you're getting a little support. Right, playing with pointing the foot if that feels good. Same hamstring stretch. The reason it feels more intense is we're stretching the nerves with the flexed foot. Yeah, nice. And then on the next one, if you want to play with some ankle circles, some toe crunches, just kind of playing in space. And we'll take this into our side twist. You can bend that leg. Left leg's going to cross the body. You can either keep the right hand on the thigh to help kind of pin it down, or if you like the long leg, you can extend the left toes on the diagonal away from your left hand. Right? Knee is very rarely going to hit the floor, so don't feel like you've got to get that knee down. And then you can lengthen that leg away. Reach your arms overhead here, nice big stretch. So fingers and toes in opposition on your back. We're gonna go for a roll up. If you know you need a little more assistance with roll up, you can always bend the legs, right? Or if it feels a little bit better in the low back. We're gonna sweep the arms to the ceiling and then exhale to curl all the way up. If you need to grab your thighs, you can. Nice, yeah. So we'll cross our ankles. Let's do a little hands and knees here. So on hands and knees, just kind of noticing if you get a lot of pressure into the outside edges of the wrist, see if you can find some connection to your finger pads. We know traps are going to overwork if our hands are in front of us. So bring your shoulders over your wrists. It's a little bit further forward than we typically feel like we want to be. Just try 3 rounds of cat-cow. So rounding the spine, pushing away, gazing towards your thighs, and then extending the chest, still pushing out of the ground. So we want the support as you take your 2 other rounds. We want the support to be from underneath, so kind of lat under the armpit area. And a good way to sort of make the body do that is to make sure the shoulders are really stacked over the wrists versus the face being stacked over the wrists. Pushing out, squeezing with all the finger pads, noticing that your pelvis gets to move in both directions. Nice. So you're gonna find your neutral. We're gonna do 3 on each side, but we'll switch hands. So I'll bring my right hand down to the mat. I'm gonna sweep my left hand up and back, make a little circle here, and then I'm gonna replace my right hand with my left and circle up and back with my right. It's okay if your hips move. We're just going for some thoracic mobility. This position's pretty tricky. Love an exhale or an inhale with the breath. See if you can push out of your supporting arm. So my supporting arm is gonna push to help rotate. And that's what gives me the space versus kind of focusing on the gesture arm. Yeah, nice, totally different. And we'll just try one more. So supporting arm, pushing to rotate, right? And that's your kind of side plank strength building. So now we'll come back. We're gonna try a bird dog. So focusing more on supporting limb system versus the floating limbs. I'm pushing so strongly out of my supporting arm and leg that I can tap opposite fingers and toes or float. You can choose your level here. Can I keep the same pushing out as I return? So there should be essentially no shift, and we'll just alternate sides here so we don't have to count. We love that. There should be no shift in the supporting system. What that means is that we're constantly pushing out of the ground. And then when we return, we have to actually press out of the ground even more. So the work only increases sort of on that eccentric lowering. Nice. Yeah, tons of oblique work, right? This position, for whatever reason, is one of the most studied positions in fitness. And it's so good for everything. Hip stability, our balance, shoulder strength, obliques. Let's try one more each way. Yeah, checking in. Are you returning your wrist underneath the shoulder? Should feel like a lot of tricep. You can kind of think of pulling opposite arm to opposite thigh. Yeah, nice. Let's we'll come off the wrist for a moment. You can cross your ankles. Let's grab the ball. We'll do half roll back kind of 2 ways. So the first way, we're gonna put that ball underneath the low back. It's really easy to arch here. So kind of get pulled into a flat back position. So we kind of have to adjust the ball so it keeps us in a little bit of a curve. So we don't want to feel a strain. Should feel like maybe a little bit of core work just to be here. And that's when you know you're in a good place. We're gonna bring the hands together. You're gonna curl up just a little higher in the core. We're gonna do a little rotation. Just easy exhale as you switch from side to side. So the ball is going to give you some good feedback on if your spine starts to flatten out, right? If we get into that straight back, it's also going to give us a good piece of feedback if our pelvis is shifting. So can you keep the hips really stable and just rotate from the waist? And so of course, this is oblique work too. Nice little isometric hold. Let's just try one more to the right and one more to the left. Then we'll curl up. We're gonna take that ball, we'll place it in between our thighs. We're gonna revisit the same position, but different info. So now I'm having to hold the position myself. So I'm gonna roll back to where I feel like I can maintain this position without letting anything change in my spine. I'm just gonna open my right arm to the side. And then come back to center. Yeah, so the ball's gonna be your friend. If you can squeeze that ball, it's gonna keep you from shifting or rotating. So oblique work, right? But in a different way. We don't always think of not moving the trunk as oblique work. Can your shoulder blade slide towards your spine? So allow your shoulder blade to move a little bit more, kind of like a clasp here in your back. So I'm letting it plug and open. You'll find the ab work turns up to a little bit higher level. Yeah, try to keep that head forward. So you're not even gonna rotate your gaze. No, even trickier. One more here. Nice, then you can curl all the way forward. Take that ball out. Let's take a little butterfly, do a little cat cow. So distance is adjustable. You can use your arms. So it's a nice protraction stretch. So I'm actually gonna let myself kind of hang on my ankles and tuck my chin and get a little stretch through my upper back. Then I'm gonna pull with my arms. I'm gonna try to rock forward, maybe elbows bend, and I'm gonna lift my sternum to where the ceiling and the wall meet. We're just moving in between those two. So just easy breath, inhaling and exhaling. Kind of like if you could talk to your neighbor, nothing too crazy. And just noticing here, where does the movement feel like it comes from? More spine, what part of the spine? Is the pelvis also moving, or does pelvis feel like it's not moving so much? And can you find the area that's maybe a little less involved and play with trying to find movement in that spot? We'll just do one more here. Yeah, nice. You got your arms to assist. Cool. All right, we'll do a little more hip torture so you can bend your legs. So yeah, tight hips doesn't always mean we have really strong hips, right? So it is crucial to strengthen deep hip, even if it feels like a lot of work. So we're gonna bring hands behind the thighs. We're gonna roll back. So you get to use your arms to assist here. Can I keep my spine in the C curve? I get to use my arm as much as I need. Can I draw my thigh up? And then lower back down. Yeah, and this is super deep. We're talking like, insertion, psoas business. So different from knee extension, right? That's actually going to inhibit our ability to lift a little bit. So we can bring the thigh in first. Yeah, and it's deep core, right? You can feel where there's quite a bit of kind of teaser ab work happening here. We'll make it a little harder. So this next one, you can hold. Now here's where I might push a little bit. So I might use my hamstring to push into my thigh. Try to bring your second leg up. Now you might find you have to roll back, right? We have different sort of balance points for our teaser. Maybe we let go. Yeah, nice. And it should feel like it's a little bit, unstable. We're just trying to find that stability with breath. And then just gently, you can roll forward, walk your feet out a little wider. Nice work, you guys. Take a little, so hands if you need them. And the challenge would be no hands. Can I rotate? Feet further is going to be a little easier. Feet closer will be a little more challenging. Can I rotate one leg, an internal rotation, one leg, an external rotation? And it's always good info. It's like, can the thigh at the hip joint, right? That's what drives our knee. It's not my knee moving, but it's actually my knee's moving because my thigh is rotating. And ideally, we want relatively even range of motion in both directions. And that's going to help with hip stability. Our thighs work, our hips rather work the best when our thighs are centered in the hip socket. And that's front, back, side, obviously, but let's try this one more. Nice. And then let's cross our ankles. We're gonna come back onto hands and knees. So I have to scoot back a little bit here. We're gonna try a different variation of our bird dogs. We're gonna do same side. So for this one, again, kind of setting up, making sure my shoulders stacked over my wrist versus my head. So I'm less trapped, I'm more supported from underneath, so the power is from under. I'm gonna push so strongly out of my right arm, that I can just slightly rotate my ribs and my left arm comes up. Yeah, nice. And it's the shoulder, right? It's my supporting arm that's doing the work. And I can lower without falling. So I'm just decreasing that tension. And then I'm pushing like crazy, 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 crazy. This arm just comes up. So it's not me lifting it. It's just my pressure down is so strong that my ribs rotate. So if this feels okay, see if you can try lifting the knee. So now I'm adding a little bit more hip and oblique stability. Can I lower my knee and my arm without crashing? And here's where that eccentric becomes, right, the harder component. It's easy to lift, but it's a lot harder to lower. And so here's where I'm pushing out like crazy, pushing out. It's like your arm is the space hold, your arm bone, and your ribs are rotating. So I'm pushing so strongly, my ribs rotate, and then I'm having to push even stronger to rotate my rib cage back over my shoulder. Yeah, and then the next kind of fun version, we'll say fun, it's our idea of fun in Pilates, is could I float my foot up? So now that leg just floats. Suddenly supporting hip, right? So there's your supporting glute for your balance, standing, walking, etc. And then can I lower back down without crashing? You know, if we're being like super picky, we're saying that the limbs lift and touch at the same time. As long as we're not crashing down. Yeah, this is a really great way to build, again, the strength for your side arm work as you rotate your ribs. If you're adding your eyes, that's a whole other level of challenge. So can my eyes look towards the wall as I rotate and come back down? It's a ton of work. And keeping a soft gaze right as you're adding your eyes is a totally great first way to do it. We'll just take one more each side. This is a lot of shoulder work here, a lot of hip work. Checking in with the breath, right? We tend to balance and we take a big inhale and then we stop breathing. So if you catch yourself holding your breath, sighs are a great way to kind of turn down the nervous system. All right, 1,000 later, you can come onto your forearms. Great way to measure elbows and hands, and then you're gonna make 11s. And we're still on our quadruped. We're gonna sweep our right leg back. Little kickstand here. So all we're gonna do, it's okay if there's a little bit of rotation, is we're gonna do a float. Think of pushing out of your arms and you're supporting hip. So that leg floats up and taps back down, but it's actually your supporting limbs that are the force. So you're creating the support from your shoulders and your supporting hip. And then if you think about the front of your legs being one color and the back of your legs being a different color, so say the front is green and the back is blue, you want to open the front of the hip and activate the glute. So the back color is what's leading. We don't want to lead moving back in space with the hip flexor. We're going to lead with our glutes. And then you can come back in for a moment. We're going to come back up to hands and knees before we do the other side. Find your neutral position tabletop, checking in with your stack, tuck your toes. We're gonna do a tiny little hover. So the idea is my spine's gonna stay completely flat. So crown of the head and tail reaching away. I'm pushing out of my arms already. Did all that really good work, pushing out, float the knees 2 inches off the ground. And breathe. Does the pelvis wanna tuck? Or maybe the ribs fall open, head change. And with the same amount of energy pushing out, just gently lower the knees back down. Yeah, lovely, nice. Come back down to your forearms. You can remeasure if you need, keeping that shoulder stacked over your elbow. Extend the left leg back. And same thing, so can I push using my supporting system? So supporting hip rather than falling out to the side, it's pushing in. My arms are engaged here, still lots of shoulder work. Yeah, sweeping the front of the hip open. It's like there's a little string on your glute. And we certainly don't have to over-engage. You know, it's a pretty common thing, I think, where we'll kind of pre-tension before we move. Your glute is on, but it doesn't have to grip. So this sweepy, pushing out of the supporting system feeling. Just noticing differences from side to side. Range, fatigue. Let's try one right here. Nice, and you can come back down. We're gonna do one more little hold and then we'll get off the wrists for a bit. So stacking shoulders over wrists, tucking the toes, spine's nice and neutral, flat back position. When you're ready, you're gonna float the knees just 2 inches off the ground. Yeah, notice if you kind of pushed back, just slide your body forward a little bit more. It's gonna be more abs, more triceps. Yeah, nice. For 3 and 2 and 1, and then you can lower those knees down gently. Lovely, yeah. Cross your legs. We're gonna come into some full roll up. So give the rest a break. So for full roll up, if you wanna use your ball, you can. Bent legs can be nice, not just if you're working on roll up, but for some of us, it's just better on your back. Still counts, still a full roll up. If you wanna do your full roll up with the most support, hands at the thighs, arms are gonna sweep overhead, and then you'll use your momentum with your breath. So I'm gonna press my arms down as I exhale to grab my thighs, and then I've got this to help me back up. And obviously you can integrate it so it feels a little less clunky, just showed it very slowly. If you want long legs, you can also go to your long leg full roll up. Whether you have the ball or not, it's the same mechanics. Inhaling, sweeping the arms up, exhale. The idea is you can kind of coordinate the momentum of your arms pressing down. Yeah. And a good way to practice too for coming up, think of you want your hamstrings to be working for you. So you want to have like a pumping action, right? So when you're grabbing legs, because a lot of times our legs like to lift, right? Hip flexors like to take over a little bit here. I want to think of pushing with my heels. So if I'm like pushing my heels along my mat, we want to try to cue into that posterior chain. And that's where that pushing with the back of the hand feeling can come into play. And if you love full roll up and you have done it a million times, then you can torture yourself by going super, super slow in both directions. Yeah, lovely. And you can also make it a little harder by getting rid of your arms. So I can keep my arms just tapping at my shoulders on the way down or up. Really good way to work that eccentric. Make it harder on the way down, and then you can support yourself a little bit more on the way up. So I can have my hands by my shoulders. We're just gonna do one more full roll up here. Okay, we'll roll all the way down and we'll roll to our side. Whichever side you prefer, kind of whatever gives you better visuals. So do a little side leg work. We're gonna do the ball behind the top knee. And for this, we will put the head down. It's kind of up to you for comfort. And I'm lifting to spy. Long, bent, whatever feels the most comfortable there. Let's go bottom leg long and flexed. So we're gonna flex the foot. We're gonna get the quad engaged, bottom hip is engaged. Top leg is gonna stay parallel, and all I'm gonna do is lift and lower. And so as you're lifting and lowering, if there's any knee tension, you can ditch the ball and keep the leg bent. So if it's a little too much for the knee here. So I want you to notice the difference between external rotation and abduction. So the leg is gonna float up, but the whole leg is gonna stay parallel versus rotating. And if we're thinking of where the movement's happening, we're gonna find the side of our hip. And it's right where that thigh bone is moving in your hip socket versus like the waist joint, right? So we don't want the waist to change at all. It's quite a bit lower. So it's going to be where like maybe the start of the back of your jeans pocket would be. And it's this idea of lengthening away towards the bottom of the mat. Yeah, nice. And we can still feel our glutes and external rotation, just a different work. We're gonna pause at about hip height. So you're just hovering here. And then we're gonna sweep the leg back. So you're gonna try to sweep that knee back behind your supporting leg and then come back to neutral. And so sweeping that top leg as far back as possible. So you're really having to open up the front of the hip. Again, if knee doesn't love this, you can get rid of the ball. Have a little slightly longer knee bend. Should feel like some hamstring here and a little bit of kind of back of the knee work. Glutes for sure, nice. Yeah, and your supporting leg is there to help you. So you can keep that active bottom leg. We're gonna try one more like this, and we're gonna mix it up again. So we'll come back to neutral. So for this one, take your time. Does not have to be on a beat. We're gonna rotate the knee up and the foot forward, and then we're gonna rotate the knee down and the foot up. And so internal, external rotation. And usually one direction will feel easier and it might not be the same on both sides. Take your time if you find, ooh, I don't really do a lot of external rotation. Maybe I need an extra second to find my max range or vice versa. And then can you keep the trunk relatively stable? So here's your oblique work, anti-rotational, as you're rotating that leg. And then we're gonna take the ball out. We're gonna do one last really mean thing before we do the whole thing on the other side. You're gonna turn your leg in. So my knee's down, my foot is up. And from here, from my hip, rather than my knee extension, I'm gonna try to pulse my leg up. So my foot's reaching to the ceiling. Yeah, nice. And it's all coming from my hip joint. Should feel kind of spicy at this point. Let's go for 3 more. Checking in with your breath. For 2. And last one. And then, you can lengthen that leg out. How was that? We felt some glutes, right? I know, deep internal rotators. We don't use them a lot, but they do need some love. They'll cramp out pretty fast. So if that last round was like seizing, it's not unusual. All right, so side 2. Bottom leg's gonna be super active, flexed foot, quads engaged, ball behind the knee. So we're gonna start with, keeping that length through the torso. We're not working from the waist, but rather lower. So way down here, just a lift and lower. And we're just identifying what is abduction, which is moving away from center, versus external rotation, which is turning out. So my whole leg staying parallel. One of the harder ranges, part of why we do turn out. It's working your side glute that supports you in all of your balance work, supports the low back. Just kind of noticing range differences. If you need to make an adjustment on one side, we're asymmetrical. So we might need to do something different from side to side. That's totally fine. So we'll pause at hip height. We're gonna do a sweep back. So I'm gonna sweep my knee back further than my supporting leg and then come back to neutral. And so we're allowing the front of the hip to open, We tend to get, oops, lost my ball there. We tend to get really tight through the hip flexors. So how do we balance it? We activate the opposing muscle group. So we can do passive stretching or we can do active mobilization, which is more valuable because then we're teaching the muscles that maybe are locked out a little bit that they can work to support. Just watching the back as you extend. And then on this next one, we'll pause in neutral. We're gonna go into that turn out, turn in. So taking your time, My knee goes up, my foot comes down. Here's your press. So it's like your clamshell. It's happening from the back of your glute and thigh. And then I'm going to turn in. So knee down, foot up, and I have to allow the movement to happen at the hip joint. And this one can be tricky if we're really tight. It could be almost more of a less thinking about activation and more of a thinking about releasing and ungripping. And there's a lot of muscles running through our hips, pelvis, low back area. So congestion is not uncommon. Sometimes it's just breathing and ungripping. Going for movement more than focusing on engagement. Still breathe in, just kind of noticing differences from side to side. Do you find that one side's easier, one rotation's easier? We'll pause on this next one. You can take the ball out. I know, saved the worst for last. You're gonna turn your leg in. And then from here, right, so I can fake it with my lower leg, but see if I can, from my hip, pulse that leg up. Nice, yeah, a deep internal rotation. So good to balance out the hip joint. And you can use your supporting limbs, right? Think about when you were doing your bird dog, your supporting limbs, your forearm glutes are giving you the strength to push that leg up. And we'll just try one more here. And then take a little rest. Hopefully you guys will feel that later. Let's roll onto your front. We'll do a little extension here. So we're gonna do just a flying squirrel, Superman. With this one, a couple things to note. So we will float the legs up, but I wanna really get the shoulders going well. So you can rest your cheek on the ground to start. We'll turn our head as we rotate. I want you to think of spinning everything out, your arm bones. So I wanna rotate my arm bones so my palms are maybe facing down or facing towards my body, and my shoulder blades are going to come onto my back. So that's kind of our very first important piece. It's very hard to extend if our shoulders are tipped forward. I don't have a lot of space. If I can put my shoulder blades on my back and spin my arm bones out, I have a lot more space to extend. So we just want to keep an eye on that. We're just going to do a hover. You can float the legs and the upper body for one breath, and then you'll lower back down and just rest the opposite cheek. I love an inhale for extension. That kind of goes with the natural way your diaphragm's moving. If you don't love an inhale, an exhale helps your core activate a little bit more than you could do an exhale. Yeah, nice. Good with the shoulders. It's like the more your shoulder blades can retract towards your spine, the more space you have to float the chest up. Yeah. Just like the glute stuff we did earlier, if the front of our hip is trying to lift our leg, moving in the wrong direction, right? That lifts our leg forward. So I want to think of opening the front of the hips and getting the glutes to be our feature. We'll try one more like this. Nice. And you can bring your arms by your shoulders here, ribs, using your core, press back, take a child's pose. Wide knees can be really nice for hips, for more hip mobility. For low back release, legs closer together can be really nice. And you're welcome to flip your palms to the ceiling if that's a nice stretch. And then just gently walking your hands back here. We're gonna knock out some more core work. Yay. Hardly done any abs. Okay, we'll take our ball for this one. We're gonna do a little upper back placement. So for this one, kind of the best position, again, we've got differences in kind of bony structure, but about shoulder blades tapping the ball is kind of where we wanna be. If the ball is really low, we're gonna have a way bigger range of motion. So if we need less range of motion, we can always move it closer to our head. So that's sort of your adjustment. I would scoot this way just a little bit more. Yeah, if back arches, you'll know right away. So it's a good cue. You're gonna have your hands behind your head. So check out your pelvis. Wherever it is, it's gonna stay here. I'm gonna keep my pelvis stable as I lengthen back over the ball. And then using my arms and my abs, I'm gonna curl back up. Right, so if I notice, ooh, low back, just arch ribs pop, doesn't feel good, I'm gonna scoot a little, ball a little higher towards my shoulders. If I want more range, I can move it back. So we're working extension. So it's how do I extend my thoracic spine without losing support in my low back and my low core. So my pelvis is gonna stay stable as my back moves here. And one of the cool things about Pilates is kind of the mix and match of how do I isolate and coordinate different muscle groups and different movements of the spine, which is pretty neat. And it should feel like, you know, a little core work, but nothing super crazy. Practicing plugging those ribs into neutral. I'm gonna try one more like this. We'll pause up at the top. Okay, so I'm holding, I'm gonna imagine I'm gonna come off the ball. I'm just gonna do a little pulse as if I'm gonna come off the ball and then weight back down. So really little pulse. Where's the pulse coming from? The ribs, right? Ribs sliding down towards my hips. So it's very small motion. Let me know if you don't feel any core. We'll turn it up again in a moment here. So again, yeah, nice, exactly. Identifying, is it my head and my neck doing it, or is it my core? And then on this next one, you're gonna scoot so the ball's a little bit higher on your back. And we're gonna rotate into so if my pelvis is gonna come towards me, my flat back position, slight rotation, got my hands behind my head to support. Without letting my pelvis change or my back change, I'm gonna float one leg to tabletop. And I'm gonna lower it back down. And I'll try the other side. Exhale is a great breath here. Right, if you notice a lot of popping, move the ball higher. That's kind of our go-to. Nice. Next time you have a leg up in tabletop, pause here, bring your second leg to meet it. So now you try your toe taps here. Counterintuitive, you're gonna do a little bit more of a crunch as you tap. So as that lever moves away from center, you wanna support your back more by curling up a little bit higher. Checking in, is it thigh or is it knee bend? So make sure that thigh is what's moving away from, yeah, awesome, from center. A little harder. Do you feel some more core now? Okay, good. If you want to make this a little bit more exciting, an option for the last 8, you can take a bicycle. Longer lever, right? You can choose your height. So we know higher is going to be a little bit more hip flexor, lower is going to be a little bit more glute, but also more core. If you can recruit your glutes, you get a little more support when you take that leg lower. You're halfway here. Exhaling. Nice, this looks great. Last 2. And last one. You're gonna carefully lower one leg down, carefully lower that second leg down. And then if it feels comfortable, you're welcome to extend over the ball. If that's like not your jam, just roll over to the side and you can take that ball out from underneath you. Yeah, nice abs on extension. So now we'll do some more abs. So yeah, never enough abs. So this one's a little, if you don't have a ball, this one's a fun one. If you don't have a ball, you can do the choreography without the ball. But what we're gonna try, whether your knees are straight is not as important. You're moving from your hip joint. I'm gonna put the ball in between my ankles, ankle kind of shin area. And then, so I'm in my imprint position, right? Core's having to work just to be here. I'm gonna try, and I'll show bent and straight. I'm gonna try to rotate my right leg on top of my left. So now I'm holding the ball, one leg stacked on top of the other. I'm gonna rotate back to center, and then I'm gonna try to get my left leg on top of my right. Yeah, nice. And you can do this with straight legs as well if you've got the flexibility. And we're just gonna practice this hip circumduction. If you need to adjust your ball, it's not perfect science because it's a little squishy. You can always reach up and adjust it. And then we're gonna make it a little harder by taking it a little lower. And so this is your full hip joint having to work here, outer, inner, deep hip and glute. We'll take just a couple more like this. Yeah, resting as needed. Go for about 4 more rotations here as you play. It's important to just try some silly stuff sometimes. You can barely feel your abs working, right? Because the distraction of the ball. And then we'll take that ball out. All right, so we'll do a little bit of classic work here. We're gonna go into a scissor. For scissor, you can keep your head down, you can keep it up, you can support it with your hands or make it harder by supporting your crunch with no hands. For my scissor, right, I get to choose my range. Again, it's okay if your legs aren't straight. We're going for hip joint movement and torso stability. So when we scissor, if we need more support, we're gonna match towards the ceiling. If I wanna do my classic scissor, I'm gonna match on the diagonal. So as my legs pass, they're gonna pass further away from my body. So those are a couple options here. We're gonna come into our imprint position, head down or up. I'm gonna curl my head up here. Gonna reach those legs to the ceiling, and then we're gonna take our scissors. The more you use the supporting leg reaching long to extend the front of the hip and kick that glute on, you're gonna get a little bit more length and support. So it's like, how do I use the opposite leg to get this leg higher? I'm just exhaling. Nice, we'll go for 4 more sets. Last 3. Last 2. And last 1. And you can pull your legs into your chest. Nice, take a little swing from side to side here. We'll try one more fun, classic ab. So for this one, you can have your left leg bent and supporting, or you can have your left leg long. My right leg's gonna be in tabletop. So we're gonna do a couple oblique twists here. Hands are gonna be behind the head. So I wanna keep my right shoulder off the ground. I'm gonna curl up and I'm gonna reach my left elbow towards my right inner thigh without letting my right arm rest, a little rotation, and I'm gonna come back down. And exhaling to twist. Now, if I wanted to make this harder, we're just gonna do 5 more here. I could float that left leg just a couple inches off the ground if I wanted a little bit more work. So it's definitely more of an up and over than a side bend. Got 3 more here. Yeah, nice. And if that shoulder, elbow is kind of resting on the ground, that's your cue. It's a little more side bendy. Nice. And then you can change your legs out. So bent leg for your supporting leg or long, and that left leg's going to be in tabletop. And then thread your hands the other way, so the way that feels a bit odd. And then we'll take 7 on this side. So we're going to curl up and rotate over. Nice. Yeah, supporting the head. So as you get fatigued, noticing, is it either yanking on the head, or does it feel like it's the neck and the chin that's doing a little bit more? You want to float that right leg up. We've got 4 more here. So super deep psoas, working that leg in extension. Nice, last 2. And last one. Rotating from the waist. Awesome. Okay. Figure 4 stretch. So let's cross the right ankle over the left thigh. You can keep your legs down here, sweep your arms into a T and take a twist from side to side. If you want more of a stretch, you can float the legs to tabletop and take the same twisting. And if it feels nice to stay and kind of hang in one twist a little bit longer, so again, active mobilization. It's going to be a little more beneficial. And if you want to pause and try your piriformis stretch on this side, you'll cross your right leg all the way over your left, like you're sitting cross-legged in a chair. And then you can draw your legs into your chest. So maybe it's grabbing thighs, maybe below the knees, maybe ankles. But as you pull your legs into your chest, you're gonna press your tailbone down. So I'm getting a little bit more of that piriformis, your driving nerve stretch. Figure 4 is also welcome if you prefer that guy. It does a little bit more for you. And then we'll uncross the legs. Take something, whether it's just lengthening the legs long and giving them a little wiggle, or taking a windshield wiper. Just kind of check in with, okay, where's my square before I go to the other side? And then we'll cross the left ankle over the right thigh, arms out to a T, play with that twist from side to side here. Again, option to draw the legs up. It's a little more work, but you're getting that active resistance that you're creating. So it's gonna be a little more rewarding. And if pausing on one side for a couple of breaths is calling to you, kind of taking note of maybe what feels like it worked a little bit more, something that maybe needs a little more release. Always good to sort of reflect on that, and then you can take it into your next movement practice. So across the left leg all the way over the right, if you want to try the piriformis, grabbing either thighs, below knees, or ankles, and you'll pull the legs into the chest as you press your tailbone back down. So again, this one's a little more active. So you're resisting. And then you can uncross the legs again, kind of something to even your legs out, whether it's just lengthening them long or windshield wipers or legs to the ceiling. And when you are ready to exit, just think about how you want to get up. So maybe it's rolling to the side and supporting, maybe it's a full roll up, maybe it's just a couple rock and rolls, just kind of giving yourself a plan of attack. And I'll leave you guys there.